Okay, welcome everybody.
She'll acknowledge when it takes.
Oh, okay.
Okay, Krista, can you confirm we're live?
Yep, I see it on your screen. You have that up. You want to mute that YouTube screen. Otherwise, you're going to get feedback.
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
Mute that screen right there that you're on. You know, the video, mute the video.
Okay.
Okay, and now you'll want to go back to, because you're screen sharing this, you'll want to go back to the meeting packet. You are live.
Okay, welcome everybody. It's 4:30, so I'll call the Dunn County Solid Waste Recycling Committee to order. And if everybody will unmute, and I'll have Diane take the roll call.
Supervisor Gary Bjork.
Here.
Supervisor Tim Lenow.
Here.
Supervisor Chuck Maves.
Here.
Board Member Ryland Erdman.
Here.
Board Member Ed Hartung.
Here.
Board Member Forrest Johnson.
Forrest is here, but I think he's having audio issues.
Board Member Steve Rasmussen.
Here.
Board Member Zenon Smolarek.
Here.
Board Member Terry Stam.
Here.
Thank you. Just to remind you guys, I'll be sending you your expense reimbursement forms by email. Go ahead and print them off and either scan them and email them back to me, or mail them, or send them right to the county clerk's office. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. And we also have the corporate counsel, Nick is there, and Keith Stray, and Mr. Miller, the county manager, and Mike Larson, and Krista Vine. Has everybody had a chance to look at the minutes from the special meeting on April 28th?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Would somebody like to make a motion to approve it?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay. Steve Rasmussen moved. Is a second?
Second. By Chuck.
And Chuck Maves seconded. Is there any discussion or correction? If not, it'll stand approved as presented. And it should be a fairly short meeting tonight, but we'll go right into the staff report. Morgan?
Okay. Good evening, everybody. So the first thing that I will present here on screen. So today at the PR&D committee meeting, we had the presentation of the resolution request for the $330,000 deficit transfer from the county general fund balance. Keith Stry and I put this together. Now, the reason I put this on here is, if you'll remember at the last meeting, that number was substantially higher. After we worked through all of the calculations along with Keith, we came up to $330,000, and that is the amount that we have moved forward here through this resolution. So at this morning's PR&D committee meeting, it was unanimously approved to move forward. This will now move on to the executive committee for consideration tomorrow, May 13, and it'll move on to county board for consideration on May 20. So any questions on this? No action item on this or anything. Just wanted to make sure that you guys knew the exact amount we were pushing forward here. So.
Morgan,
Yep.
You might want to just elaborate a little bit about how you were able to get that down from over 600,000 to 330,000.
Well,
some good work, I think.
Some of the items that you'll be motioning on tonight, like the clean sweep cancellation is a big one. So, we were anticipating a $95,000 clean sweep this year. You will be having a consideration for canceling that event this year. And I guess I won't talk more about that until we get to that as a staff report. But the conversion from a twice a week collection site model to a Saturday only model for the remainder of this year is also another one you'll be considering tonight. So with that is how we brought that down. The actual number we brought it down to was about 326,000 and change. And in talking with Keith, we just rounded that to 330. We thought that was appropriate. So that is the amount that we have put forward, and that was approved at PRND this morning.
Thank you.
Question here.
Yeah, Ryland.
Is this a amount that we're going to have to pay the county back, or is this just to make up for? Are they considering this an expense?
So this will need to be paid back to the county general fund in 2021, and this amount, along with the other adjustments that we're making to per capita, this amount will be expressed in the 2021 per capita, and we're working on that. Obviously we won't be presenting that, won't be presenting a final number to municipalities until September. The board will see a much more refined per capita estimate in August when you start taking a look at the budgets. And we'll have a better understanding there. But yes, to answer your question, this amount, the deficit for 2020 moving forward, this is so we keep a Saturdays only model going through the remainder of the year for the collection sites. We keep the transfer station open its normal business and residential hours, and the public drop off Monday, Wednesday, Saturday. Any other questions on this?
Morgan, Ed here. So is it just county? Does the city of Menominee share in that at all?
The city of Menominee has been left out of these calculations because they have acknowledged to the county manager that they will be withdrawing from our program. Now, I have not received an official letter stating that they're going to exercise their clause to get out of the program yet. I hope that they will reconsider in light that we don't have a final per capita yet. We won't until later in the year. And I hope that they hold off their decision until such time that we have a more accurate number for them. So, but this number does not include that because it's fairly well understood that it looks like they're going to be pulling out of our program. So if anything, it's a conservative number.
Ryland here. My understanding is that the city, like Morgan said, is going to hold off until the per capita fee adjustments are made before making any decision. So the city's not leaving the county's program this week, but the decision's being postponed for now.
Thanks for the update on that, Ryland. Okay, any other questions? Again, this will go in front of executive tomorrow for consideration, and then the county board on the 20th. And I'll keep you posted on that progress. Okay. So then one thing I wanted to acknowledge is you've seen a change in the way that we're presenting the supporting documents, and that was at the request of the county manager. Typically for action items and reports done on the agendas, they'll be expressed from this point forward as staff reports. And within those staff reports, when you open them, it will give you a synopsis of what the consideration is. And then at the bottom of that, it will indicate what action is required to address the action item. So the goal of this is to make it more simple for everybody, less discussion, so you have time to read all of these in advance and have an idea of how you will vote coming into the discussion. Clearly, we can answer any questions during the meeting, but the hope is that this will drastically reduce the amount of time that we have to discuss items as you have all of the information that you need coming into the meeting to make a decision. So that first staff report under consideration of actions, item A, is approve a June 1st, 2020 collection site operation model, which we've talked about, and I'm going to bring that up here. So one of the ways that we trimmed costs this year to keep that deficit as low as possible, like we discussed at the last meeting, was to change from change from our current COVID model where the small satellite sites are closed, and also change from the 3 large sites, Boyceville, Colfax, and Elk Mound, being operational Wednesday and Saturday. Instead, as of June 1st, converting to a Saturdays only model for all collection sites. And that's an 8-hour day on Saturdays for the small sites as well as the large sites. So we're spreading out that opportunity throughout the county as has been requested by board members and many residents. I have received quite a few calls, people not happy about the Wednesday hours getting cut, but it seems like many of them understand that by doing so, we're able to keep the other locations in the county open and present more opportunity there. So, excuse me. So any questions on this? What I've done is just put the new hours at the bottom here, which would kick off June 1st with your approval tonight. We're asking you to consider approval starting this on June 1st. So Gary, would you like to make a motion now, or?
I think I'll do all 4 at one time. We'll get your report done, and then we'll go to the action items.
Perfect. So are there any questions on this action item? Hearing none, we'll back out and we'll go to item B, which is approve request for referendum. So just a quick synopsis of this, as we've spoken in the last couple of meetings here, is a motion tonight to move forward with a request for referendum in the fall. Many of you have asked what that would look like as far as amount and time frame. And the Solid Waste Division sat down with the county manager and CFO, and we gave this good thought, and we felt that the referendum should include a $1 million annual assessment with a 5-year limitation. So essentially I guess a sunset clause after 5 years. That money would be used for all manner of capital needs for the division moving forward. So if you motion tonight to approve this, then this request for referendum would be on the PRND committee meeting on May 26 for consideration, would go to executive committee on May 10 for consideration, and finally at the county board of supervisors on May 17. After that, it will require a big push for outreach to all of our residents and businesses to get them well in the know of why we're requesting the referendum, the reasons behind it, the pros and cons of the program, all of that, to make sure that when they come into the election in November, that they arrive at the ballot well knowledgeable of why we're asking for the referendum.
So one question, Morgan, how can it go to the county board on the 17th and yet it does not go to the PRD committee to the 26th?
Yes, I apologize. That should be May 26, June 10, and June 17. Yep, sorry about that.
That makes more sense. And
Typo. Yeah.
okay.
Morgan, or Mr. Chair, I have
Yes.
a question. Is the money from the referendum, cumulative $5 million, is that limited to capital expenses, or is it also for operational expenses?
Morgan?
It is for capital expenses, but it can be used for operational expenses as well. So I don't know that there's any limitations to how that money is used. Keith, I think you had a discussion on this the last time we spoke. You want to maybe chime in?
Sure. The thought process there is in promoting this really shows where the most significant need is going forward. The thought was that it would be primarily promoted and legitimately used for the capital needs. We have a very old facility that's been talked about requiring replacement. That will be 10 to $12 million or whatever the final amount ends up being. There will need to be some dedicated funds towards that. There's also a list of equipment that needs replaced in the next several years. And there's no fund balance to even make those purchases. You could utilize part of this for operating, but I would suggest that you want to keep that very limited to the extent possible, because really the operating deficit or operating costs should be intended to be captured by the normal revenue sources, whether it be tipping fees and things like that are collected, as well as per capita and other normal operating revenues. So that was, as we talked and planned through, I guess, the business approach to this, that was the thought process of keeping it primarily to the capital infrastructure and capital equipment.
Good. I would second that, Keith.
Any other questions on the referendum request? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to item C. Approve cancellation 2020 clean sweep event. Okay. So in reviewing this report, we all know what our challenges are with incoming revenue versus the outgoing expenditures. The clean sweep last year was a record clean sweep, and I think the overall cost was in the high 60,000s. We were forced to go out for an RFP in 2020 to establish a new clean sweep vendor because our previous vendor was unavailable to do clean sweeps in 2020 for various reasons. We had a single bidder, Veolia Environmental, and great company, but we saw a 63% increase in disposal costs through that vendor. So that catapulted our estimated clean sweep cost to $95,000. And clearly, with a budget in distress like we have now, we got a lot of feedback from our municipal representatives saying it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to have a very high cost clean sweep event when we're borrowing so much money to maintain operations. I would have to agree. So one of the items tonight that we will look at for you to consider is to cancel the 2020 clean sweep. Now, we did reach out to DATCP, Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection. We get a grant from them for the clean sweep every year. And even though we're not having a clean sweep, we have a considerable amount of hazardous waste and chemicals that we have diverted from the collection sites and the transfer station throughout this year since the last clean sweep that we'll need to get rid of. And we asked if we could use the clean sweep grant for the disposal of those chemicals without having a clean sweep event, and they graciously allowed us to do that. I think with the whole COVID thing going on, there are many clean sweeps being canceled this year, and nobody knows exactly if they're going to be coming back online later this year with, depending on how the stay-at-home order goes and the social distancing and everything surrounding that. So most clean sweeps, I think all clean sweeps, have been canceled until further notice. Ours would be no exception. So we took about $70,000 of that 95, put it back into the budget to help keep the deficit as low as possible. We maintained about 25,000 of that to assist with disposal of chemicals we do have on hand at the transfer station. That also includes disposal of compressed and pressurized cylinders and tanks, which we also have a significant inventory for. So, and that's a fee item that we take normally. We don't take chemicals at any time of the year. We find them in black bags, and we find a lot of them in roll-off boxes, but the tanks and cylinders are something that we do charge a fee for. It's likely that we will have to increase the fees on our tanks and cylinders if we're to continue to accept those, because the cost of disposing of them, since we've seen the 63% increase, is a little bit higher than the fees that we're charging. So we're looking at that as well. So it just doesn't make sense. And I think we've got the I think we got the nod from most of our municipal members as well, that just having a clean sweep in 2020 at that cost with the deficit that we're looking at just doesn't make any sense. It's very unfortunate. I'm very passionate about clean sweep, as you know, but we're just not going to be able to do it this year. Any questions? Clean sweep.
What do cities like Eau Claire do for a clean sweep? And is there any way that we could piggyback along with a larger area like that to save money in the future?
Yeah, we've done that in the past. We do that through what's called a memorandum of understanding with the surrounding counties. We've done it with Polk County and we've done it with St. Croix County. Now this year, since we're not having a clean sweep, we don't have that reciprocity with other counties. But the Eau Claire program works where they're able to take hazardous waste at multiple times throughout the year to WRR Environmental, which is our former haz waste vendor. They run their processing facilities in Eau Claire. And so Eau Claire residents are able to take it directly to WRR. They don't have an event per se. Like
they do have events. They do have 3 events a year in Eau Claire County. Their first one was supposed to be this past weekend, but was canceled because of COVID. So I believe they have events coming up in July and September. But yes, it is held directly at WRR's facility. And we've reached out to Eau Claire in the past, and they haven't been willing to join our memorandum of understanding in the past.
Yeah, so they can take it to a single location, that's WRR, and that's where all of their waste is processed in Eau Claire. Another county that's been resistant to that, those shared costs, is Pierce County. Steve Maelstrom over there has done his clean sweep independently for many, many years. And there's pros and cons to doing it both ways, but that's the situation.
Can a citizen from Dunn County go over to WPR or wherever it's called in Eau Claire?
No, because we don't have that agreement with them to be able to do that.
Okay.
Now with our clean sweep, when we had WR as our contracted vendor, that was the case. Dunn County residents were able to take material directly to WRR under our clean sweep contract. But since we're not moving forward with a contract this year, they will not be able to do that.
Morgan, is WRR out of the business, or can you flesh that out a little bit as to why we can't work with them?
That was a very interesting conversation we had with BJ Mahalik, he's the lead on the clean sweep programs from WRR. When we started talking about the 2020 clean sweep, it took a while for WRR to submit their information. And when they did, their prices were really, really highly inflated over the previous year. So then we decided that was going to trigger the need for an RFP, which we did. And we noticed that WRR did not submit pricing for that bid. And they said they would not. And we asked them why. And BJ stated that they just don't have the bandwidth to cover clean sweeps much outside of Eau Claire anymore. They don't have the resources to do it, both personnel and time and energy. And the interesting part about it, BJ said that the numbers that he sent, they weren't really rooted in any true numbers. He made up some high numbers at the direction of his supervisor, just so that Dunn County would not accept their bid. Interesting workaround rather than just telling us, hey, we can't do it, you know? So that's the case there. They're just not able to do the clean sweeps like they used to. They don't have the staff. They don't have the resources.
Thank you.
Morgan, this is Tim Lenow. I've got a question for you. As we accumulate these hazardous materials, are they stored on site in our old facility?
Correct. Yep. We do our best to sort them by type so that we're not mixing corrosives with bases and flammable gases with other things. We have a limited ability to do that. Obviously, we're not designed to store material like that, but we do a good job of containerizing it and keeping it in separate areas until such time that we normally have our clean sweep event, and then we move those materials out during the event.
Will we be able to continue to store if we're not having those clean sweep events? Is that going to create a problem for us?
So one of the things that I was talking about earlier is we have monies aside in this year's budget to deal with that. So even though we're not having a clean sweep event, we're doing what's called a milk run disposal with some local hazardous waste companies, perhaps WRR. It'll be a contract, or not a contracted, it'll be a fee for service type of situation. And we'll probably do 2 milk runs this year. We think we have enough funds to do 2 milk runs to get rid of that material.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions for the director? I have just one question: is how much solid waste is Menominee Disposal bringing in? Like they said they would. Have they started it all yet, or is that still in the future?
Menominee Disposal does bring some tonnage in. I don't have those numbers in front of me where they're at year to date right now.
Okay.
I did reach out for the benefit of the board. I did reach out to Doug, offered him our best discount, which is a $5 per ton discount. Normally that's only met by haulers who have brought us 5,000 tons in a given year before we apply that $5 per ton discount. Mr. Gullen replied the same day that, hey, thanks very much. We're looking into this, and very sorry it took so long to get together. I replied the same, said it, I agree. It's it's a shame we haven't come to terms on this earlier. And 2 days later, I got another email saying that basically an accusatory email saying that I was trying to force him into flow control, and he would never agree to bring us all his solid waste. So that's where that conversation ended up. To put this in perspective, our cost all in to the landfill when we get rid of garbage is $56.20. Make sure I got that right. Yeah, $56.20 all in. So, if we're giving a $5 per ton discount, our margin's about $3.80 on a ton. And I can tell you that that is not enough to cover our operations. We are not charging enough at $3.80 a ton margin to make up for what we're losing in operations. So I stuck my neck out for Doug there, and they decided that they weren't gonna bring us the tonnage that I requested. So we haven't really come to a decision yet on what they're going to do. He said he would agree to bring some material to us, didn't indicate how much, a very small portion, I think he said. But at the $3.80 margin, gentlemen, if he brought us 5,000 tons, that only equates to about $19,000 in revenue. So at this point, we've put the $330,000 deficit projection does not include tonnage from Menominee. So not include that anticipated tonnage. So my recommendation is we move forward with things as they are.
Any other questions for the director? Are you all done with your?
We got one more staff report here, and that is going to be
inspections.
The reschedule of the site inspection. So for the benefit of those who are new on the board, Tim, and Ed, I think I don't know that you were on the site inspections last year. I can't remember.
Yes, I was.
Well,
Yeah.
okay.
Yep. Mhm.
And Forest.
Sorry. Yep.
Yeah. Mhm.
So every year we plan a Saturday, and it's usually the morning and a portion of the afternoon where the Solid Waste and Recycling Management Board members are invited to come out to our collection sites, and we get a passenger van and we bring everybody along and allow you to inspect the site, see what we do, talk to the attendants, because we are open on Saturdays. So see the conditions of the site, see the challenges everyone's up against, see the good job that they're doing for you out there. And it's just a good time for you to see what we're up against every Saturday at the collection site. So this year, that was falling this month right in between an extremely busy meeting schedule with all the special meetings and all of the action items that we have moving forward. So we decided to postpone that, I think, for the benefit of everybody. So tonight, what we would like you to do is think about a Saturday coming up in the near future here that you would all think would be a better day to do that on. So that is the staff reports, action items.
Mhm. So I think we'll go right to those action, items now, and we'll take them one at a time. And the first one will be A, approve the June 1st, 2020 collection site operations, which is basically just that Saturday for the collection sites, and then the regular time for the transfer station. Is that correct?
Yep, so it's a Saturday only model for the collection sites. The transfer station commercial hours would remain the same, and the public drop-off hours would remain the same. And by remain the same, I mean pre-COVID hours. So transfer station Monday through Saturday for commercial, and public drop-off Monday, Wednesday, Saturday. And then all of the collection sites, including the 4 small ones, Ridgeland, Rock Creek, Downsville, and Connorsville, all open on Saturdays for 8 hours. And that would be 7 to 3.
And I think we're all kind of, disappointed about not having the Wednesdays, but we got to get our expenses under control. So we have to take some pretty drastic action. So I'd like to have somebody make a motion that we go with these new hours starting June 1st.
It's Ed. I'll make a motion that we go with the hours proposed June 1st.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second to that
Second.
motion?
Tim
Okay.
Lino, second.
And discussion, any discussion? For or against?
Ryland here with a question.
Yes.
What, right now, I assume with the city of Menominee, at least with their drop off in town for trash and recycling, has been busier than I've ever seen it. Currently, are we going to experience issues if we cut back hours? And any idea how we're going to deal with that?
I think it's going to be, very busy. And one way of dealing with it is going like the longer hours on Saturday, going 8 hours. And I think people, once they get used to it, they know what time they maybe go. They won't be quite so busy. So I think they'll try to go that route. So we have any other questions on this, on the motion?
Just a comment, Gary, this is,
Yes.
I've been going to the recycling center on Saturday mornings. And yeah, it's quite busy, but it seems to flow pretty well. It's set up really well where you got multiple lanes there. It's like what, four lanes or 5 lanes you can go down. So in spite of our situation here, I think it's a good way to go right now. So
Okay.
I think it'll flow pretty good. I really do.
I would send out some kudos to all of our contracted labor too, because to answer your question, Ryland, yes, there will be an increase in throughput. Our attendants are up for the challenge. They're rising to the challenge. They're doing a great job. So we've got some really good people out there working really hard to deal with that volume. But I think to Ed's point, we're dealing with it.
Any idea how much money this will save compared to what we were doing a year ago, or whatever, however our budget was based?
Yes, we did have that calculation. I don't have it in front of me. It was significant. The running, the whole reason that the primary reason we're in a deficit is the manned collection site model is an extremely expensive to run model. We've got 8 manned sites throughout the county, plus the transfer station and recycling center, the public drop off. All of that hauling, all of that staffing, the annual markups, the O&M, it's very, very expensive. So by reducing operations out of those sites, by one day even saved us a significant amount of revenue that we were able to plug back in to keep that deficit as low as we did. Again, I understand for the municipalities who might be on, it's It's not great to have that Wednesday removed, but it's absolutely essential to keep our costs down, to keep that deficit as low as possible. And a $330,000 deficit is not a small deficit. So we're doing what we can.
If there's no other questions on the new hours starting June 1st, all in favor of the new hours, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. And our second item is to go forward with a referendum request. And we've had that already like discussed, like $1 million per year for 5 years. And hopefully most of that will go for equipment and just to keep the buildings like up and running. So any discussion on that, or is there a motion that we go forward with the referendum?
Gary, Ed speaking. I'll make the motion that we approve it. But then I have a question afterwards.
Okay,
Ryland here, I'll second that, and I have a question as well.
okay. So we have a motion and a second to go forward with a $1 million per year for 5 years referendum. Now I need discussion. I think Ed, you were up first for a comment.
Yeah, the only comment I got is so we assess this $1 million for 5 years. So we keep running in a deficit. Say we do run a deficit next year of another 300,000 or whatever, So we're gonna is the plan to increase the per capita then to keep going that way, or are we necessarily going to draw out of this fund? I'd like to see an increase in per capita and save the equipment. But have you had any thought process on that at all, Morgan?
Yep, we are working through per capita every day as more information comes in. So
Okay,
yes,
so this money,
per capita
this money will be-
is, go ahead.
this money will be set aside for capital improvements.
Yeah, and we're gonna need it. You got to remember the other part of this equation is that we've incorporated the depreciation, for equipment that we already have into next year's per capita. We've incorporated a fund balance replenishment metric into next year's per capita. The one that hasn't started yet is the cost for debt services related to bonding for a new facility. So I think everybody is aware and supportive that if we are to continue operations in Dunn County, we're going to need to think about investing in a new transfer station sooner than later. That would be a perfect example of where this money could help offset some of the costs of that. We would still have the county going out, as Keith mentioned, to bond for a $10 to $12 million facility should that get approved at the proper time. But that would certainly be, a capital asset that some of these monies could be used to support in part.
So Ryland, you had a question.
Yeah, my question was along the same lines as Ed of I'd like to see this, any money from a referendum used just for the capital improvements, because I don't think that it will go over well with the public to say, well, we need a referendum just to cover our operating expenses. I think that would be a recipe for failure right off. So I think that we need to have a plan of what capital improvements this is going to be used for. I understand including some of the building repairs on a 20-plus-year-old building, but yeah, just having it go to payroll and other daily expenses. I don't think the residents of the county are going to go for that.
I agree 100%. In fact, last night I went to the town of Grant monthly meeting because they had on their agenda the Dunn County Solid Waste, and they made a statement that if the per capita went up to that $70 per person, that they would drop out. So then if you have municipalities that are dropping out, then the rest of the citizens that are part of it are going to have to pay more yet. So we're kind of in a bad situation that we got to raise like more money, but if we try to raise more money, we're going to have some municipalities drop out. And there's like 4 out of the 5 of the board members up there. They've all got dumpsters, so they're already paying twice for the like for the service. They're paying per capita, plus they're also paying for their local haulers to stop and pick up their garbage. So it's kind of a no-win situation. But
Yeah.
okay, go
Mr.
ahead.
Chair?
I would add on to that it is a difficult situation in that, you know, as a special revenue fund, we are a business. We should be covering our operations exclusively through our business model, and we're unable to do that. And we've pointed out the losses that we see at the collection sites each year. It's very significant. You know, and yet the impetus is there to keep this model moving forward in its present condition, meaning all these manned collection sites. So as we move forward through this process, that is one thing I would caution, is that from a business perspective, operating at a deficit that way is probably not the best way to move forward under your model. Now, there are alternatives. I know you've been hesitant to hear them from me because they directly relate to a cancellation of services at the collection sites, but it makes up for that in other ways, still providing services in the county. But those present in the board here have made it clear that we want to keep these collection sites running. The municipalities have made it very clear that they want to keep the collection sites running. And so we're going to do everything we can to make that happen. But just as a word of caution, moving forward in this mode of doing business, it's kind of a form of kicking the can, I would say. Steve, you had a question.
I do. Actually, it's for Keith. Would this $5 million generated by the referendum help to offset potential bond issue? In other words, we wouldn't have to bond for 10 to 12, maybe 7 to 8 or something like that because of this, of the referendum.
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes, please.
Absolutely. And that's why when Morgan and myself and County Manager Miller discussed options and how best to prepare this, my experience with referendum asks and facilities and things like this, you really want to be clear on what you're using it for, consistent with the conversation that's taking place here. And part of this was also thinking to different aspects. To tie it to operations is really a tough conversation. To tie it to facilities that the county owns and could repurpose in a worst case scenario or have control of is a better approach, better messaging, and so on. Getting directly to your point, Mr. Rasmussen, yes, this would allow us to reduce the amount of borrowing, which would in fact reduce the costs overall over the life of the bonds, because then you're repaying less interest costs. It also positions the county, if all of this was approved, that if we're putting a significant, more or less owner's equity or down payment towards a facility, just like with economic development, or if we would, any of us individually go out and get a loan for a house or a car or something like that, if we put a significant down payment down, it actually helps our credit rating. It can help us with other things related to that. And in today's financial conditions, that's really a good thing. So especially in light of the operating situation with the budgets here, that if we can show the market that the voters have stood behind it, passed a referendum for this extent, it certainly helps us on many fronts, including the financial piece on it.
Thank you.
Keith, are there any other comments or questions on the referendum going forward?
Keith, I have a question for you. This is Tim Lenow. Of this $1 million, approximately how much of that would be earmarked for a sinking fund for the new facility?
Well, it all depends on how the language and how this is implemented by the county board and the wording of the referendum and how budgets annually are set up. Purely from a financial perspective, if the best case scenario would be to put 100% of it in. Now, I don't know about the reality of it, because we know to build a facility like that, it's going to take multiple years. So we may have to take a portion of that towards one of the other board members did mention about, you've got a very old facility that's having some catastrophic failures. We may have to put a sinking fund towards part of that. But if you keep it linked to facilities, to continue operations until you can replace with new, I think you have a better perspective. We'll have to work through those details, Morgan and I and the consultants and anybody else involved, to really determine a breakdown. But my intent and recommendation is try to keep as much as we can for that quote unquote down payment, and keep it towards the new facility and equipment. I know when we did the 5-year capital plan in March, this operation, solid waste and recycling, had several pieces of equipment in the 5-year window. So you could identify those as part of the use, which then certainly helps reduce those costs too.
All right, thank you.
Gary, I have a comment.
Another
Yes,
question, Mr. Chair.
go ahead.
Steve or I?
Who?
I think Dave was first.
Okay, Dave, I guess you were first.
All right, I guess I would like to see most of it go for to put away to offset what we would have to bond. But if we can at least use some of it for any capital expenses going forward, that would at least help reduce the per capita fee that will be going out to all the municipalities, and hopefully we won't lose any by being able to take the capital expense out of the budget.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and that's a good point. We are going to have capital needs for equipment that money would be extremely useful for. New loaders, new skid steers, new balers, et cetera, et cetera. Repairs to offices, repairs to transfer station. Last week we had a truck rip the frame for the overhead door right out of the ceiling because the door is fairly small for the size trucks that are being manufactured nowadays. So every week it's something different down there. So having some of that revenue from a referendum, if it passes, and remember, this is all predicated on whether or not it gets passed in the fall. And so just so everybody knows, we can't budget, we can't really forecast any budgeted revenues from a request for referendum. We're just going to have to see if that passes in the fall and then assess it from that point forward.
So Steve, you had a question?
Yeah, several. Is it going to be a binding referendum or an advisory referendum?
Keith, can you answer that question?
I believe that might be better answered by the county manager or corporation counsel. From my knowledge, you're better having a binding referendum so you have clear direction, but I know there's different aspects to it.
Okay.
This is Paul Miller, county manager. It would need to be a binding resolution or binding referendum rather, so that we're guaranteed the income. We can't count on it otherwise. A advisory one is simply advisory and has no authority to actually raise funds.
Okay.
Correct.
Right. Why go to the effort? Second question, did the truck driver have to pay for the door?
Normally they would, but nobody saw it happen. Nobody reported it. So the truck driver either didn't know that they hit it, which is entirely possible. Those trucks are big. And
yeah. Third question is, we went out for bids on a study. What is the status of that? Is that the study for a new facility, right?
feasibility study. Yep. So
Yeah.
we went for a request to have contingency funding for that study to the tune of, I think it was $33,000. That is currently on hold. Pending the situation that we're dealing with right now. We have to first get approval to move forward.
The
But-
situation being cash poor?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
And the fact that we need board approvals to be able to continue operations here, so we can look at that discussion again later after the approvals
Okay.
come through so that we know we're gonna continue. But right now, we don't know the answer to that.
So I think
Okay.
Terry had a question. I've seen your light up there, Terry. Stams, do you have a question
No, I'm
or
good.
comment?
It was answered. Thanks, Gary.
Oh, okay. My question is, I think it's been answered before, but I have a short memory. Would this referendum include all the county or just the municipalities that are part of Dunn County Solid Waste?
It would
Mr.
have to be
Miller.
crafted, it would have to be crafted for all property taxpayers.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, okay. Nick's got a comment?
Yes, I was gonna say that, just the county manager is correct. It's not a levy based on a program or authority for a program. It's a referendum to exceed the levy limit by a certain percentage and a certain amount. And so it would apply to everyone.
Okay, thank you very much. So I think we have enough discussion on this. We have a motion and a second to go forward with this referendum. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. And the third action item is the cancellation of the clean sweep. I think that is a pretty no-brainer. Mr. Rasmussen moved. Is there a second?
Second, Tim Lenow.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to do away with or to cancel the clean sweep for 2020. Any comments or questions? Zenon?
Nope.
Oh, okay. You kind of lit up there, so if there's no comments or no questions, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. And the last action item is to have a later date for the annual inspection. So sometime when we can move around more freely. And I think it'd be kind of hard to pick a date now, or do you want to pick a date now, or just sometime in June or July, or just wait?
Right.
Yeah, we could pick it up at a future meeting, yeah.
I think that'd be best, probably. Maybe put it on the June agenda, and if things are more clearer, we can pick a date then when we work out for most of the board members. And if there's no other questions,
Well, Mr. Chair, maybe we should formally postpone that to a future meeting, since it was an action item.
okay.
So I would move to postpone the discussion to the June meeting.
Is there a second on that?
I'll second that. Chuck Mayes.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to postpone the date until on the June agenda meeting. So all in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So that will be a discussion item or action item on the June agenda. Now, if there's no other comments, questions, if not, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chair. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Well,
Thanks,
we've done
everyone.
pretty good, just an hour.